So, assalamualaikum everyone. So, today we will discuss about five dimensions of a software project. So, Vickers developed an approach at Eastman Kodak in New York, to better frame project startup discussions. He believed there are five dimensions that must be managed as part of a software project. From dimensions, here we mean that five factors. So these dimensions are not independent. And for example, if you add staff member to the project team, this may shorten the deadline. However, this will increase cost. A common compromise is to shorten the deadlines by reducing features or reducing quality. So common compromises that need to be made among these five dimensions are not easily made, but can be illustrated as so as to have more realistic discussions and better document these decisions. For each project, you must have an idea of which dimensions have more constraint and which are able to offset these constraints. With each dimension, there are three roles associated: a driver, a constraint, and a degree of freedom. So, what is a driver? A driver is the specific and major reason for which the project must be carried out. So, it is, you can say, it is a stimulation or motivation for a product that has a competition in the market and must often offer new features that are expected by clients. The deadline is the main driver. For the project to update a software, the driver could be a specific feature. Defining the project driver and associating with one of the five dimensions allows us to focus on the status of each dimension. So, driver is something that drive you to make that change happen. A constraint is an external factor that is not under the control of project manager. If you have a set of, if you have a set number of resources, the staff dimension will be a constraint. Often, cost will be a constraint for a project under contract. Quality is also a software constraint for medical devices or helicopter, for example. So constraint is anything, any external factor that is not under the control of a project manager. So certain dimensions such as features may have roles as both drivers and constraints when feature is negotiable, non-negotiable. Any dimension that is not a driver or a constraint provides a certain degree of freedom. These dimensions can be adjusted to contribute to achieving an objective under a given constraint. The five dimensions cannot simultaneously be either all drivers or all constraints. Therefore, the priority of each dimension must be negotiated with the client right from the start of the project. So it is important that you, for each dimension that we discuss, we have to see that what are the drivers and what are the constraints. And we must assign a degree of freedom to each of them. Here are two examples of how to use this negotiation model proposed by Vigor. Caveat diagram with the five dimensions allow us to illustrate the model using a graduated 10-point scale where 0 means total constraint and 10 means total freedom. Figure 2.9, which is here. Figure 2.9 describes the project is developed in-house with a set team size and a schedule with a little leeway. The team is free to determine which features to implement and quality level for the first version. Since the cost is linked for most part to the staff expenses, it will differ depending on the amount of resources used. Given the schedule allows for some leeway, deadline may vary slightly. So number of features are flexible here, and so it has a high degree of freedom here in terms of features, in terms of cost, in terms of staff. We don't have in terms of quality as well, and in terms of schedule as well. So staff is a bit is a constraint here due to fixed number of staff members. So figure 2.10 describes the flexibility diagram for the critical software project in which quality is the constraint and schedule has a high degree of freedom. So in a critical software, we always focus on quality, and we don't care about how much long it takes to develop. The patterns shown in this diagram provide an idea of what type of project you are dealing with. A project cannot focus all its 10 dimensions at 0. There must be some latitude with certain levels to ensure some project success. So figure 2.10 is here. So you can see the schedule is very flexible, but in terms of features, in terms of quality, it is very strict and it is more inclined towards the center. All too often is in short discussion, we tend to speak only of budget and schedules. It is this attitude that generally leads to overruns and chronic dissatisfaction in our industry. We therefore have to get our administrators and clients accustomed to the reality of not always having the features requested without defects delivered quickly by a small team at a low cost. Figure 2.4 can be drawn up to summarize the results of negotiation at the start of the project. And for each dimension, the table describes the driver constraint and the degree of freedom. The software engineer will attempt to describe the values given to each dimension. So this is the table 2.4. So you can see the 5-dimension cost, features, quality, schedule, and staff. These are the 5 dimensions. And which one is the driver, which one is the constraint, and what is the degree of freedom over here for each of the dimensions. A major characteristic of quality culture and software engineering principles is that the expectations and promises are established professionally and in a negotiable manner. Of course, this type of step may at first meet with resistance, but this approach will help you to avoid accepting projects that are not realistic or impossible to carry out in the conditions laid down. Therefore, you should get into the habit of taking a pass on the unrealistic project and not committing to unavoidable disasters. You can also use other tools that are available to you to help make the right decisions. The next section presents the code of ethics that can be used to convince your clients and superiors of the importance of having a quality culture. Referring to a code of ethics can help the engineer better understand and communicate in a quality culture. So this is all for this topic, and see you again. Always.